attend your afternoon classes and vice versa. If you have an afternoon test, you're supposed to go to your morning classes. In my experience, kids do what they want, and parents just call accordingly. But the school, like, will your teachers take attendance? Yes. But, you know, no, you see where I'm going with this? I can't really tell you, like, what to do. I could just tell you what a lot of kids do. And the day of the test, I think people do what's best for them. Did that answer that at all?
We just got an email, actually. So
regarding that?
Yeah.
That said you're supposed to go to classes, right? Yeah, I think that's the gist. But, you know, I don't know. And I've been at this for 20 years, and kids just, like, A-push is before my test. Kids are going to disappear. And I'm going to look on Infinite Campus, and I'm going to see they're taking a test that day, because it'll tell me that. And I'm going to consider that when I'm taking attendance. Will I give the kid a cut? No, I won't. But I can't say that every teacher does the same. Okay? You might want to run it by your teachers. Just tell them, listen, I have a test that day, and see what they say. All good? Or are you reading? That's always, you know, honesty is always the best policy. Talk to your teachers the day that you have an exam. Like just let them know, hey, I have AP Psych on Tuesday. And I'm sure many of them will be very understanding. No one wants to add stress to you guys. Like, everybody's pretty much hanging by a thread. So, any other questions? Regarding the review, there's no review this Saturday. I thought there was. I thought Mrs. Cerise was doing one this Saturday, but she is doing one next Saturday. Okay? So today, we are going to work on states of consciousness. So there we'll be looking at different theories of why we sleep and dream. And we'll also look at hypnosis and drug consciousness. We'll also go over different types of neurotransmitters and what they do and how drugs affect them. Then we will do motivation and emotion. Okay, so I put a bunch of material inside of Classroom. So I'm going to open that up now. First, I will share my screen. And Max, you will see a very big picture of yourself. Okay?
Cool.
All right. All right. No, it zapped it. Okay. So, drinking what? A Starbucks?
Yeah.
Okay.
I ran into someone today, but they didn't say hello.
I have a feeling I know who. Was this
Yeah.
person working at Starbucks?
Yes, they were. But they were busy screaming at people, so.
Well, you know, everybody's got their thing. Okay, so I am, okay, so I'm sharing. Figures this is right in front of the icon I want. So now what do I do? Hold on. Nope, don't want to do that. All right, there it is. Okay, and my message is still popping up. Hold on. Do not do that, right? That can end in disaster. All righty, so here we are. So let's open up. Oh, guys, this is the way it's going to work. So I've made outlines in here, and I was doing this with my classes today, and I think it's probably the most efficient way to do this. You guys should open up this file that says states of consciousness and has an outline. So as I'm going through my presentation, you just fill it out. Okay, so my slides are going to correspond with this material. But sorry, but since it's always good to, you know, write down things that I'm saying, this gives you a nice spot where you can jot stuff in the margins and whatever else. Okay. All right. So let's move. All right. So you work through there, and I will work through. Let me see. Let me do this. Okay. All right. So we'll be working in this one. Okay. All righty, folks. Here we go. So the first theories deal with why we sleep, okay? So there's two theories that you need to know for that. I guess this is a little slow. Uh-oh. Okay. All right. So the first sleep theory is called the restoration theory. Okay, it says sleep is a time where we restore the body. So if they ask you on any, like to write in an essay anything about the restoration theory of sleep, this is what they're talking about. The evidence is that the pituitary gland is most active during sleep, which means sleep is a time where we restore and repair our body tissues. This is why when people are sleep deprived, they start forming sores and stuff on their body, because you can't repair your body when you are, if you deprive yourself of sleep. Okay, so if they ask you anything about sleep in the pituitary gland, restoration theory says that sleep is a time when we restore the body's tissues. This is also why people that are sleep deprived tend to stunt their growth. You know, sleep is a time when you grow. Okay, most often they ask you about this. It's called circadian rhythm theory. So you need to know what a circadian rhythm is. If you speak Latin, it's probably easier, but since most of us don't, the word circa means about, and the word dia means day in Latin. So circadian rhythm says that sleep is part of a natural rhythm that we're on. The circadian rhythm is 24 to 25 hours. So even though our day is 24 hours, we're basically on a 24-and-a-half-hour clock, which means we're always playing catch up. Circadian rhythms affect a lot of things. So your energy, your alertness, your body temperature, your mood is all affected by circadian rhythm. They bottom out at around 4 a.m. and they peak out at right around now, 2 or 3 p.m. or 4 p.m. So what this means is your mood and your energy and your alertness and your body temperature will be lowest at about 3, 4 in the morning. And your energy level should be highest right around 2, 3 in the afternoon. Okay? So the circadian rhythm theory just says we're on natural rhythms. And you guys know that after a weekend or after a holiday, it's always hard to get back into your rhythm. Okay? Jet lag is called circadian dysrhythmia. That's medically what jet lag is. It's a circadian rhythm disorder. You fly across time zones, your circadian rhythm gets messed up. You have 4 days off from school, your circadian rhythm gets messed up. So circadian rhythm is just our sleep-wake cycle, okay? It's affected by external and internal cues. So they did experiments, you might see this on the AP, where they put people in caves, where they were totally blocked from any kind of light, clocks, school, work, and they wanted to find out if their circadian rhythm would stay where it was. And they did find out that it stayed fairly even when blocked of all the external cues that are supposed to wake us up in the morning. Okay?
Mr. Moyal?
Yeah, Max.
So where would be the evidence?
This is the evidence. Circadian rhythm theory, the fact that you could put someone in a cave, separate them from lights and clocks, work and school and everything else that's supposed to affect our sleep-wake cycle, and they still stayed pretty steady. I don't know why the AP always asks about circadian rhythms, but every year this is a staple. There's also a part of the brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. It's called suprachiasmatic because it's above the optic chiasm, which is where the signals to the eyes cross in the brain. So what it says is that it is affected by light. So we know that. We know that light affects our sleep. Okay? Does anyone have any questions? Anyone want me to slow down? Okay. Another rhythm that they ask about a lot are sleep cycles. So sleep cycles are about 90 minutes apiece, and you have 4 to 6 of them per evening. So we cycle through dreams 5 times a night. You have 5 independent dreams of one another. You forget most of them, and some of you forget all of them. But the average sleep cycle is based on people's EEG readings. So if you remember, an EEG measures brain waves. And when you're in different stages of sleep, you show different waves. Okay, and you need to know what these waves are and what they accompany. So I put them in that handout, and you should jot little notes next to each stage of sleep. When we're awake, we show what are called alpha waves. Alpha waves mean you're alert. So remember the A's: alpha, awake; alpha, alert. So right now, if you were hooked up to an EEG, you'd be showing these tight, high frequency waves. And it means that you're tuned in. When we start descending into stage 1, we see you're still showing alpha waves. They might have tightened up and got lower in amplitude, but they're still tight. And you're still semi-connected to the outside world. One thing that they might ask you about stage 1 sleep is that we have feelings of falling and floating during stage 1. So if you've ever had those feelings, those sensations of falling, I actually kind of enjoy them. I don't know about you guys, but I always find them to be pretty trippy. I don't know. But that only happens in stage 1. Okay? Stage 2 is defined by these things called sleep spindles. I've seen the AP ask about these two. They're called spindles because they're like little spools of thread on sewing machines. Or at least that's why they call them that. But what it is just a burst of electrical activity. So you can always tell when someone's in stage 2 because they'll have these little bursts that we call sleep spindles. Okay. As you start moving through the night, you go to stage 3 and 4. These two collectively are your deepest sleep. So when you're in stage 3 or 4, you're really, really deep in sleep. If you wake up during these stages, you're going to feel really disoriented. Stage 4 shows the same brain waves of someone in a coma. So each night, for part of that 90-minute sleep cycle, for all intents and purposes, you are in a coma. You're showing the same brain waves. And if you look, now you've moved to something called delta waves. So remember the D's, delta, deep sleep. So delta sleep is deep sleep.
Would stage 3? So stage 3 and stage 4 are the same?
Well, they're both deep sleep. And
now stage 3 still in the delta would move to delta or no?
Not quite. Not quite. Okay, so if they ask you anything about delta waves, that's solely associated with stage 4, the same way that sleep spindles are solely associated with stage 2. But I mean, I don't know if you guys can relate to this, but have you ever been woken up by someone in the middle of the night, or maybe you fell asleep on a couch and then they told you a story about it and you go, what? I don't remember any of that. If they did, then you were probably in stage 4 sleep. You were totally out of it. I didn't tell this to my classes this year because I haven't taught this yet actually, but when I was a teenager your age, I fell asleep on the couch and my sister woke me up during this stage apparently because she said, she goes, oh, you were so weird yesterday. I said, what happened? She goes, I woke you up and she goes, all of a sudden you opened your eyes, you grabbed my hand and said, don't get up until the bus stops moving. And I said, what? And she's like, yeah. I said, wow, I don't remember any of that. But I must have been in really deep sleep when I did it. Another thing that happens during stage 4 is sleep talking and sleepwalking. Also bedwetting. So it's kind of ironic. When people walk in their sleep, they're actually in their deepest stage of sleep, which is why it's really dangerous to wake up as a sleepwalker. So what do you do if someone's sleepwalking? You're supposed to just guide them back, okay? Don't like shake them and say, wake up. Usually they'll just crumble, okay? REM is most important. So hold on a second. Why did that happen? Okay. REM sleep is dream sleep. So when you're in a period of REM, you're dreaming. Only in REM, you're dreaming. So even though we have kind of what are called non-REM dreams, like just these visions, like these feelings of falling and floating, you only have true dreams when you're in REM. Got it? So if they ask you anything about REM sleep, default to dreams. REM sleep also is called paradoxical sleep. So you'll see that a lot. Did I put that in the outline?
No.
Anyone? Okay. And Riley, you guys can hear me all right?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. REM sleep is paradoxical sleep. A paradox is a contradiction. So the contradiction of REM sleep is your brain is highly active. If you look at these waves right here, these are alpha waves again. So see this right here? It's matched in REM, which means you are just as alert in a dream. Your brain is just as functioning in a dream as if you were awake. Yet, your body is paralyzed in a dream. So that's the paradox. High mental energy or high brain functioning and low motor functioning. Why is your body paralyzed in a dream? Because your brainstem cuts off the signals to your body so you don't act out your dream. If the motor signals to your body were active during REM, you would go with the action of your dream. Your arms would move, your legs would move. So your brainstem simply cuts off those signals. But because the ones above the brainstem get through, your eyes twitch and your face twitches. So Riley, you have 3 dogs, right?
Yeah.
Sorry to keep calling on you. But have you ever seen them dreaming where their face is like moving and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Like have you ever seen your dogs in REM? Yeah, it's actually kind of cute. We do the same things, right? Our faces kind of move and twitch, our eyes dart around. But anything below that, totally cut off. Okay? So if you look at a typical night's sleep, what we do is here we are laying in bed, and then we descend into 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we go back up 3, 2. Now we've entered our first dream. So if you look, dreams are here in red. Then we descend back down into 2, 3, 4. Then we're 3, 2, and now we're back in a dream. Then we just go back and forth between REM and stage 2, REM and stage 2, REM and stage 2. And if you look, we usually wake up during our last dream. So the moral of the story here is this. As we move through the night, you have increasing REM. In other words, your dreams are getting longer. And you have decreasing stage 4. So you get your deepest sleep early in the evening, like early in the night sleep, and you get your most dreams as you approach the morning. Any questions about that? Okay. But remember what we talked about last session. Since memory is state dependent, you only remember this dream right here. These get lost to you. Okay, it's kind of sad, because I bet some of them are pretty cool. If you look at sleep over the course of a lifetime, hold on, get this out of here again. If you look at sleep throughout the course of a lifetime, babies sleep a lot. Okay, so obviously, if you look, babies sleep at least 16 hours a day, which is probably kind of good because you need a break. And then, as you move through adulthood, we know that the elderly need very little sleep. So the big picture here is over the course of a lifetime, you're going to need less and less sleep. But if you look proportionally, babies and children spend more time dreaming. So if you look, babies spend at least half the night in REM. And if you look, old people, okay, spend about a third of their sleep in REM. So you have decreasing REM over the course of a lifetime. Why is that? Well, there's different theories as to why we dream, okay? All right. You want to hear something crazy? In the womb, you spend the whole time in REM. So they've done brain scans of fetuses, and they are in REM 100% of the time, prenatally. So then you go, well, what are they dreaming about, right? Okay, let's keep going. So now, why do we dream? Dream theories. There's something called REM rebound. They might ask you about this. REM rebound is a tendency for REM sleep to increase when you are deprived of sleep. So if almost all teenagers are sleep deprived, but if you haven't slept in a few days, when you do have a chance to get back to sleep, you're going to have vivid dreams because you're going to rebound into REM, which is a time when we dream. So then you go, dreams are necessary. Otherwise, we wouldn't rebound into them. So let's go into different dream theories. If dreams are vital to human existence, then there has to be a reason for them. Okay. Freud said dreams were all these things. So if you remember psychoanalytic theory, or psychoanalytic theory is always Freud, it's always about the iceberg. The unconscious is the most important part of the mind. So Freud said our defense mechanisms are up when we're awake. We repress things. We displace stuff. we have all sorts of defense mechanisms that are keeping us from a lot of what's in our mind. But when you're sleeping, you can't repress. So Freud felt that if repression was inactive when we sleep, dreams must give us insight into a lot of the things in our lives. So you can learn a lot from dreams, according to Freud. Okay? Freud said there's two types of dream content. You have manifest content. That's what you actually remember. So the part of the dream that you tell people is the manifest or obvious content of the dream. The latent content is the true meaning of the dream. So since dreams are shrouded in symbols, sometimes things aren't what you think they are in a dream. You need a psychiatrist to analyze the dream and find out what the true hidden, latent means hidden, what the hidden meaning of the dream was. So we looked at this dream, which was in Freud's book, The Interpretation of Dreams. And this was a man that had told him a dream that he had about his sister. And it turns out that this was a fantasy that the guy had to bed his sister and for her to bear his children. Okay, so the staircase to Freud represented sex. Since he was on the staircase with his sister, the top obviously means something in sex. And then she's bearing a child at the end. So he said, the hidden meaning of this dream is a fantasy for his sister to bear his child, which explains why it would be disguised. If this dream was not disguised, it would be a nightmare. Okay? All right. Any questions on psychoanalytic dream theory? So guys, in terms of the AP, just have keywords in your head. As soon as you see psychoanalytic, you automatically think unconscious, and you look for the dream theory that matches that. You go, okay, it says psychoanalytic, it must mean something about the unconscious mind. The second theory is called the information processing theory. Anytime you see something cognitive, it's about thinking. So cognitive psychologists do not believe that dreams mean anything. That's strictly for the world of psychoanalysts. Cognitive psychologists believe the mind is like a computer, and the purpose of dreams is to save files. So the information processing theory says dreams are a method for filing and sorting and fixing memories for permanent storage. How do we know this? Because we do brain scans on people that are sleeping. And the hippocampus and the cerebral cortex are really active during dreams. So remember, the hippocampus holds new learning. This session right here is going to sit on your hippocampus tonight. And then when you get into REM, it's going to transfer, for long-term memory, it's going to transfer that new learning, this session, into the cerebral cortex. So there's lots of evidence to support this. For example, when they give people a list of unrelated nouns to learn, they have them memorize these lists. And then they split them into two groups, and they let one group sleep uninterrupted. And the other group gets woken up every time they go into REM. What they find out is the group that's woken up does not remember the dreams, or does not remember the words that they learned. Okay? So dreams are essential for learning, which probably explains this. Look, why are babies spending more of their time in REM? This could be used as evidence for the information processing theory, because babies are learning constantly. You know, they put their foot in their mouth and then they learn, I have a foot. Children and teenagers are in school, which would explain why they're also spending a lot of time in REM. But if you look at the elderly, it's not to say the elderly aren't learning new things, but there's less learning later in life, which could correlate with less time spent in REM. Okay? So the fact that we have decreasing REM over the course of a lifetime could be used in an essay to support the information processing theory of dreams. Okay? Does anyone have any questions on that theory?
And so the hippocampus is for new learning, and the cerebral cortex is for what again?
Cerebral cortex is for permanent storage. So all of your memories, Jessica, like your memory of your 8th grade graduation, you remember all your memories of elementary school. You have a bat mitzvah, Jess?
Yeah.
Okay, that's in your cerebral cortex, because those new experiences, when you were experiencing them, stayed in your hippocampus. And then when you went to sleep, it put it in, it hit save as, right? And it transferred all that learning into the grooves of your cerebral cortex. Got it?
Yeah, thank you.
So Jess, when you think of the hippocampus, think of it as a waiting room for new memories, like this session right here. And then when you think of the cerebral cortex, think of that as the room you go into after the waiting room. Okay? Permanent.
Thank you.
Okay, no problem. The last theory is a biological theory.
Mr. Moyal,
Yes, Max?
can you go back to the last slide, please?
Yeah.
Thank you.
The last theory is a biological theory. The last theory is called the activation synthesis hypothesis.
Thank you.
This is also an AP favorite. Okay, so let me explain this to you. What it says is that dreams are not a want, but they're a need. We need dreams. Dreams are essential. So it says the brainstem, okay, this area right here called the pons, P-O-N-S, the brainstem sends out what's called neural static. So it just starts sending out electrical impulses during REM that wave across the cortex. And what it's doing is it's opening and closing different synapses. Why does the brainstem do this? Why does it randomly activate these synapses? Because if your brain were to shut down for 8 hours a night, you would lose the information in it. So just think, if your brain hit an off switch, all the memories that you have in your synapses would die. So this theory is biological because it says dreaming is the brain's way of preserving itself. Now, what's in these synapses? Memories. So as they open and close, your mind synthesizes those random firings into a story. Okay, so that's why it's called activation synthesis. The brainstem activates these synapses, and because there's memories in those synapses, the mind doesn't like randomness, so it tries to synthesize it into a story. But because you can't control which synapses are open, the story is going to be very strange. So, like, how many of you have dreams where, you just wake up and go, oh my God, like, what was that? I was in school, but my grandmother was next to me, but she wasn't in a desk. She was on a horse, like, so if you ever have like really strange dreams, then this theory best explains why. It says because in random parts of your brain, different synapses were opened, and your brain, trying to make order out of the chaos, synthesized it into a story. Okay? Now, according to this theory, then, dreams don't mean a thing. They don't mean a thing because how could they? It's a chaotic, random process. Okay, so we don't know why we dream. We just have these three theories. Psychoanalytic, dreams are the royal road to the unconscious. We can get insight from dreams. Cognitive theory, information processing, dreams are a way to file and sort memories. And the third theory, our REM sleep or dreams are the brain's way of preserving itself. Okay? Does anyone have any questions on those three theories? Okay, let's keep going. Hypnosis. No teachers do this, right? Noah, who do you have?
Karate.
Did she cover hypnosis?
Don't know. She said that we'd be going over stuff that we haven't gone over yet in class.
Yeah, I know. I'm just. Look, all of us, had our different things that got thrown to the side this year. Jess, you have Miss Cerise, right? Did she get to hypnosis or no?
It doesn't sound that familiar.
Okay. So if you've ever witnessed hypnosis, most kids witness it at camp, right? And anyone like that? I always have kids that say they witnessed it at camp or a bat mitzvah or something like that. But
Yeah.
hypnosis is when you put someone in a trance, right? So if you look at the definition of hypnosis, it's an altered state of consciousness when a person is open to suggestion. So the method is usually suggesting that people are getting sleepy or they're getting increasingly relaxed. Usually they'll have someone focus their attention on a restricted monotonous stimulus, like they'll swing a watch in front of them, say you're getting sleepy, right? We've all seen that on TV. And then they'll start to suggest certain feelings. So hypnosis has been used to say that they can treat addictions with it. Like if you want to stop smoking or you want to stop drinking or you want to stop gambling, go to a hypnotist. Some psychiatrists use hypnosis to bring up repressed memories. So if someone says that they were abused in childhood, let's say it's a sex abuse case, sometimes they'll use hypnosis to try to put that person back to when they were 6. That's called hypnotic age regression. So basically, they'll just take that watch, they'll swing it in front of you and say, okay, you're 16, you're 15, you're 14, you're 13, you're 12, until you're finally back to the age where you suffered the abuse. Okay? And last but not least, it's used for pain management. So some people, for religious reasons, won't take medications. So ladies, you're going to, many of you will have babies one day. Will you opt for the drugs? Will you opt for the epidural? Or will you say, no, just hypnotize me, doc, I'll be fine. If you were getting a tooth drilled, would you take the Novocaine? Or would you say, don't worry about it, doc, okay? Just hypnotize me, I won't feel a thing. But believe it or not, some people have had their teeth drilled under hypnosis and report no pain. Some people have given birth under hypnosis and reported no pain of childbirth. So see these 4 claims: addictions, repressed memories, age regression, pain. The last one is the only thing that hypnosis has actually worked for. So chances are, if it works for these other things, it's a placebo. But let's face it, if there was a sex abuse case where the only evidence was a memory that was pulled up in hypnosis and you guys were on the jury, I don't think any of you would convict. Right? That would be really flimsy evidence. So put a star next to this last one, or just make a note somewhere that hypnosis has only really been successful in managing people's pain. When people have chronic back pain, when people have sciatica or neck pain, then sometimes hypnosis works. But if you're a smoker and it works, and you go to hypnosis and you stop smoking for a few weeks, most people go back. Okay? It was created by this guy.
Moyal,
Yeah, what's up?
so on the sheet, it says the role theory of hypnosis, the state theory, and the dissociation theory.
Yep, I'll get there. So hypnosis was created by this guy, Franz Mesmer, which is why sometimes it's called mesmerism. To be mesmerized means to be put into a trance. All right, here we go. The big debate over hypnosis, and I showed my students, and I think I showed you guys last week, once there was an FRQ with controversial issues, and they used language acquisition, they used diagnostic labeling from the DSM, and they used hypnosis. And they said, explain 2 theories, give evidence for the theory, for one theory, and, and that was it. So 3 theories and 3 pieces of evidence. So let's look at this. The big debate over hypnosis is when someone's hypnotized, what actually is happening? Are they in another state of consciousness? So Max, that's the state theory. The state theory says you are in another state of consciousness when you are under hypnosis. So I didn't write that here, but that's the state theory, that you are in a legitimate altered state of consciousness. Just like REM would be another state of consciousness, or if you were on drugs, you'd be in another state of consciousness. So the state theory says hypnosis is legitimately a state of consciousness. The dissociation theory says that hypnosis is not another state of consciousness at all. They say when someone's hypnotized, they dissociate from themselves. So to be dissociated from yourself is to be separated from yourself. So a good example of being dissociated is to daydream. Like when people daydream, they've kind of clicked out. They're not there. They're somewhere else. Okay? So to dissociate is to separate from your consciousness, to separate from your mind. Like, for example, multiple personality disorder now is called DID, dissociative identity disorder. And when people have alter egos, they click out. They're not connected to themselves anymore. Someone else inside of them takes over. So with dissociative identity disorder or multiple personalities, usually it's abuse that causes someone to fracture. And I know I'm going on a little tangent right now, but I'll come back to this. So if a child is abused and he forms an alter ego, usually that's self-protective. You know, like he goes somewhere else when he's being abused, so he dissociates. And let's say his name is Billy, you know, he might turn into Michael, and then Michael takes that abuse, and Billy is somewhere else. With hypnosis, it's the hypnotist that causes dissociation. So unlike DID, where abuse causes kids to dissociate, with hypnosis, the hypnotist, through his suggestions, causes you to dissociate. So when they say, when I count to the sound of 3, you're going to bark like a dog, right? And then all of a sudden they count to the sound of 3, they snap their fingers and you start barking like a dog. You're not really there, according to this theory. You're somewhere else. So it says a hypnotized person has 2 streams of consciousness operating at the same time. One is with the hypnotist and one is somewhere else. The evidence for this theory is they did experiments where they put people under hypnosis, and then they had them submerge one of their arms in ice water. Now, how long can someone normally keep their arm in ice water? 30 seconds, right? You know, stronger people might be able to go a minute and a half. But when someone's under hypnosis, they can keep their arms submerged in ice water indefinitely. You know, they have it in 10, 15 minutes. It's just in the water. And then they have them take their other hands, and then they ask them to report on, okay, so this is where it gets a little confusing. Let me move this. Okay. There's a part of this experiment called the hidden observer. So imagine you have your arm submerged in ice water and you're under a trance, you're hypnotized. And then they say, take your right hand and I want you to write your subjective pain from 1 to 10. 1 being in no pain at all, and 10 being in a lot of pain. And people's right hand will write 9 or a 10, but they won't move their arm. So what that suggests is they are actually experiencing the pain. They're just not there. Do you understand? And it's called the hidden observer because someone inside there feels it. It's just not you. Does anyone have any questions on that? So I want to underscore this because this theory.
So it's technically like you're drugged in a way, right?
In a sense, like they say, you're not really in another state of consciousness, but you're in a dissociated state where you've separated from yourself. Evidence is you could put your arm in water and not pull it out until someone tells you to pull it out. But if you use your right hand and you ask people to report on their pain, they write 9 or a 10, which means they're in pain. So this underscores why someone could give birth to a child under hypnosis and not report any of the pain. It doesn't mean they're not feeling it, just means they're not really there. It explains how someone can get a tooth drilled without Novocaine and report no pain from the tooth drilling, except on some level they're experiencing it. The hidden observer. Okay? Are you guys good with that? The role theory is the weakest theory, actually. It says that it's not another state of consciousness and it's not a dissociated state. It's actually a social relationship between the hypnotist and the person being hypnotized. So you're almost playing a role. It's not that you're faking it. But usually, if you've ever seen hypnosis, they don't pick random people out of the crowd. Usually, because only 10% of people can be hypnotized. Like 10% of people are highly hypnotizable, 10% are not hypnotizable at all, and then 80% sits somewhere in between. So they have to
So
find out.
how do you know?
Well, that's what I'm getting to. How do you find out, if you're a hypnotist, who in the audience you can hypnotize? Usually they'll give you they need to see if you're open to suggestion. So they'll give you an activity to do. So watch what I'm doing. They'll tell you to hold out your arms and close your eyes. And they'll say, pretend that you have 2 large phone books or 2 dictionaries in each hand. And when people's eyes are closed, they'll do this. Their arms will drop. Some people will just keep their arms out stoically. But other people, they'll say, now imagine putting 2 more dictionaries on top of the 2 that are already there. And then all of a sudden they see people's arms drop. They go, I'm grabbing that guy. Because he's already open to suggestion. So this theory says it's not another state of consciousness. It's not a dissociated state. It's a state of what's called heightened suggestibility. You're taking suggestible people that if you say you're getting sleepy, their eyes will close, and you're putting them in a state of heightened suggestibility. And this is probably the strongest theory. Like this evidence right here. This is the accepted. Explanation of hypnosis. That hypnosis is a state of heightened suggestibility. You're taking suggestible people and putting them in a heightened state. Although this doesn't really explain why you can drill into a tooth. Because I don't care if you're Leonardo DiCaprio, you're not playing that role that well. You know, someone digs into your tooth, you're going to feel it. So the dissociation theory is very good at explaining how it manages pain. Okay? All right, drug consciousness. Usually the only things they ask you about drugs is what they do to the nervous system. After all, you're taking a psychology class. So depressants slow down the nervous system. So if they ask you about certain drugs, which drugs are depressants?
Alcohol.
Yep, I'm sorry. Yeah, Jess. Alcohol, to some degree marijuana, and certainly opiates. Okay, so those slow down the nervous system. When people, and by opiates, I mean heroin and pain pills. So when people are heroin addicts and they're on the sidewalk, you'll see they'll just start nodding off, right? Stimulants speed up the nervous system. So what kind of drugs are stimulants? Nicotine, cocaine, crystal methamphetamine, or crystal meth. But also they might ask you about ADD medication. So psychostimulants like Ritalin and Adderall.
Adderall.
Yep. Those speed up the nervous system. But a lot of kids get it wrong because it's counterintuitive. You're giving uppers to hyper kids. So kids that are hyper, apparently if you speed them up faster, it focuses them. Okay?
Is that why kids Adderall are like so like focused on one thing? Because
Well, the way they explain ADD, it's like being on a boat without a sail. You know, you're just out at sea, drifting around. You know, you don't know where to go, what to focus on. You have no motor, and then all of a sudden you speed them up, and now they're going down a path. Okay. All right. You guys probably learned this in health, so I won't spend too much time on it. But physical addiction versus psychological addiction. Physical addiction is when your body needs the drug. So cocaine and opioids are physically addictive. Psychological addiction is, and alcohol actually. Psychological addiction is when you just want it. Okay, so drugs like marijuana don't carry physical addiction; they carry psychological addiction. Potheads just tend to want to smoke more pot. But heroin addicts need the drug like they need food and water, okay? Withdrawal symptom is simply when you don't have the drug, your body gets sick, it cries out for it. And tolerance, obviously, is when you need more of a drug to do the same thing. Any questions on drug consciousness? If they ask you about hallucinogens, a hallucinogenic drug bends reality. Oftentimes, it makes people see things that aren't there. So which drugs are hallucinogens? LSD, which is called acid, and psilocybin mushrooms and stuff like that. But I've never seen the AP ask about hallucinogens. They usually ask about stimulants and depressants. This is kind of cool that like this guy took acid and then they started drawing. Did you guys ever see this? It's pretty
No.
fun. So this is 20 minutes after he took the acid, 85 minutes, 2.5 hours. And then if you look, I think this was like how many hours later? But this is how he saw himself, right? Okay, they never ask you about that stuff. Oh, if they ask you about the blood-brain barrier, the blood-brain barrier says that certain chemicals can't get through the brain through the blood. So for example, when someone has Parkinson's disease, they have decreased dopamine. Dopamine carries motor signals, which is why Parkinson's patients get the tremors, right? Like if you see someone with Parkinson's, they have erratic motor signals. They start to tremor. So since you can't just inject dopamine into the person because the blood-brain barrier prevents dopamine from crossing the blood into the brain, you have to give people the building block of dopamine. It's an amino acid called L-DOPA. Okay, so the blood-brain barrier just states that certain chemicals can't make it through the brain through the blood. Okay. Is there anything else on there?
Oh, yeah.
What?
What does it talk about?
Wait,
Agonist and antagonist drugs, tolerance, withdrawal, and dependence. And
Okay.
then you skip the whole thing about sleep disorders.
Oh, did I? Okay, we'll go through those. Well, okay, so agonist versus antagonist, okay? This is important. A neurotransmitter fits like a key into a lock. So every neurotransmitter has its own compound. So this could be serotonin, right? Serotonin binds to a receptor and it activates the system and it raises our mood. So today's a nice, bright, sunny day. Your brain releases a lot of serotonin, and most people felt good today. They felt energetic and happy. An agonist mimics the neurotransmitter. So if you take antidepressant medications, they are agonist drugs for serotonin, which means they mimic the neurotransmitter serotonin. So a better example of that would be an opioid pain medication. If this is an endorphin, which is an internal pain regulator, we release endorphins during physical pain. And this is Oxycontin, or this is heroin. It's close enough to endorphin to activate the system. So it's called an agonist. It's mimicking the neurotransmitter. Antidepressants wouldn't work unless we had receptor sites for them to bind to. And they bind to, opiates bind to endorphins. Antagonists block neurotransmitters. So I was talking about this with my classes today. When someone is having a panic attack, their brain is flooding with adrenaline. So the way anti-anxiety medications work is by blocking the flow of adrenaline. So when someone takes Xanax, or they take Ativan, or they take Valium, all of those block the flow of adrenaline. Okay?
So you mentioned something that they're like beta blockers.
Yeah, very good, Max. Yeah, that's the AP probably won't ask you about that, but that's the classification of drug. It's a beta blocker medication. It blocks the flow of adrenaline. Okay? Sleep disorders. What's the first one?
Insomnia.
Yep, insomnia is just an inability to sleep. 99% of cases are psychological, which means most people can't sleep or they feel insomnia when they have something on their mind. About 1% of cases are physiological, which means their brains don't release melatonin correctly. Okay? And then they'll take sleeping pills to help them regulate. Okay? Hypersomnia is when you sleep too much. What's the next one? Is it sleep apnea? No.
Narcolepsy.
Oh, narcolepsy is sleeping attacks. So for some reason, people think narcolepsy is funny. It's actually horrific. So when people have narcolepsy, they go right to REM. So remember how we cycle through 5 stages of sleep? But when someone has narcolepsy, they go right from waking consciousness to REM sleep. What usually triggers it is excitement, which is totally counterintuitive. But when something exciting happens, that's what triggers REM sleep. So an example, I mean, I have several examples. There was one of a narcoleptic firefighter who was going into a burning building, and the excitement of going into the burning building, he had an attack while he was on a ladder. Just went right into REM.
Really?
Yep, and crumbled. Another of a scuba diver who was underwater and had a narcoleptic attack because a whale shark swam by, which is, I think, a funny story. And it's not uncommon for narcoleptics to have an attack during sex, which probably hurts the self-esteem of the other person, I would assume. Okay. Okay, let's move to the next one.
Sleep apnea.
Sleep apnea. Sleep apnea is literally when you stop breathing while you sleep. So apnea means cessation of breathing. So every time a sleep apnea falls asleep, they stop breathing, and then they gag back into, they have to gag air back into their lungs. So sleep apneics snore a lot. They usually wake up like 500-600 times a night, but they don't know it. And they usually get really bad sleep. So what usually happens is the diaphragm just stops blowing air, or it stops rising and falling. And when the diaphragm stops rising and falling, the lungs stop pumping. So when someone has sleep apnea, they literally stop breathing every time they fall asleep. So the way you treat sleep apnea is with a CPAP, okay, is with a mask that you put over the face that blows oxygen. And I know some of you are going, yeah, my dad has one of those. But it's very effective. Okay. Next.
Night terrors.
Night
I was
terror-
going to ask about this, but yeah.
Yeah, night terrors are usually a childhood thing. So when people have night terrors, they're not actually having nightmares, because night terrors don't happen during REM. So remember how I told you only true dreams happen in REM? Night terrors happen usually in stage 4. So when a child has a night terror, which is not to say adults don't always also have it, but a lot of kids grow out of this. A night terror, you just wake up screaming. So when someone's having a night terror, it usually affects the other people in the house way more than it affects the kid. The kid usually just even forgets that it happens. But the parents, go back to their room and go, what the hell was that? He got that from
Wait,
your...
Mr. Moyal?
Yeah.
But isn't that like, so in a way, it's like the child becomes like out of their mind in a way, right?
No, not at all. They just wake up screaming.
That's it?
They usually don't even know why. It's kind of embarrassing. I had an ex-girlfriend that had night terrors. It's
So like,
terrifying.
questions. So, but they don't walk around or anything, right?
No, this
They
isn't
don't like move
walking. This
around.
is- Max, imagine you're in the other room, and all of a sudden you hear through the door in the other room, it sounds like someone's getting killed, right? Like I've seen this
right.
firsthand. Yeah. And then you wake them up, and they're totally disoriented. You go, "What's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong?" And they go, "I don't know," And sometimes they'll report
It's
something.
crazy.
I felt like I was being smothered, or I felt like this, that, or the other thing. But like I said, it's more one of those childhood things than it is an adult thing. And it's not a true dream. It's just screaming. Okay. Any other ones? Am I missing any of them? Anybody? Did I finish that out?
Think.
Yeah, you finished it.
Okay, thank you, Noah. All right, so what I want you to do is I want you to, okay, hold on. Go back into classroom, and I want you to look at the kinds of questions they ask. Okay, so let's do these together. AP review. All right, so if you look right here, I put practice questions. So this is the typical type of question, right? Sigmund Freud believed that dream analysis is useful for... Now, what word did I tell you to look for every time you see Freud or psychoanalysis?
Unconscious mind.
Yep. So Noah, what's the answer here?
Unconscious mind.
Well, yeah. So the answer to number one,
Unconscious motive.
yeah, gaining insight into unconscious motives. Hypnosis has been found to be a useful treatment for pain, right? And these are all off of APs. Hypnosis is best described as a state that induces heightened suggestibility in hypnotized individuals. But then, you know, you go, well, what if I didn't come to this session? Would I get this? So you look at the other choices here. Is similar to OCPD? That doesn't sound right. Is similar to alcohol consumption? You know, so then you go, I might have been able to get this even without learning about it. Which of the following is a circadian rhythm? And then you look.
Wait, so what was the answer to number 3?
Number 3 was B. Number
Cool.
4 is C. What is a circadian rhythm? Look at the language. Circa, about, dia, a day. So since a day is 24 hours,
Cycle.
we have 2 answers here. So the ebb and flow of your emotions or a cycle of biological functioning.
Cycle of biological function.
Yep. And remember, I told you circadian rhythm affects a lot of things. It affects your mood, your body temperature, your alertness, and your sleep cycle. Okay? REM sleep generally is an active state of sleep that's accompanied by which of the following paradoxical characteristics? So they gave you one side. So you know that a paradox is a contradiction. So your brain is active. So what is the logical answer here? Come on, guys, I told you this one. Remember, you're showing alpha waves. So for all intents and purposes, it's like your brain is awake during REM. But your body is paralyzed. So
Lower muscle movement.
yes, sir, D. Okay? So that's the paradox. An active mind, an inactive body.
Wait, why isn't it A?
Hey, there she is. Hi, Alice. Why isn't it A? Because we don't have a slowed heart rate during REM. Like if you took someone's heartbeat during REM, it would be normal. It's like you're awake.
Oh, okay.
So you're showing the same brain. You'd be showing the same brainwaves as if you were in this review session right now. Alpha. Okay.
Got it.
Okay.
What was number 2? Was it A?
2 is, yep, pain. Hypnosis is useful for treating pain. REM sleep, okay, so the large, slow brain waves associated with deep sleep, remember the Ds, right? Deep, delta. Okay?
Delta wave.
Yep, alpha, awake, D, delta. And if you remember alpha, awake, those are the same brain waves that you show during REM. Okay? The activation synthesis hypothesis states that dreams are what's the right answer here?
Wish fulfillments?
No, because that would be Freud, right? Freud said dreams are a time that we fulfill wishes, right? That our unconscious desires are played out, like that pervy dude that wanted his sister to have his baby, right? Yeah, I know. Memory integrations would be wrong too, because that's cognitive. That would be information processing theory. So it's activated memories being synthesized into a story.
Oh, it's E. Very cool.
Activation synthesis. Okay. A few more, and then we'll move on to motivation and emotion. If a sleep researcher is examining an EEG, which of the following would REM be most similar to?
Coma.
No, that's deep sleep. Jeez.
C.
Oh, my bad.
Okay, see? Yeah, see, awake. According to Freud, people dream in order to
A?
Yep.
Okay.
Evidence indicates that REM contributes to straight from the AP. REM sleep, dreams.
B.
Yep. Memory consolidation. Very good. Painful experiences associated with the termination of an addictive drug is known as what?
Withdrawal? C?
Yep, that's withdrawal. Sleep spindles appear during which stage?
Was it stage 2? B?
Yep, stage 2. Which of the following drugs slows the nervous system?
Is it nicotine?
Nope, nicotine lifts you up. It's a stimulant.
Is it B?
Yep, heroin.
Heroin.
Yep. People on heroin are not speedy. Okay, most of them are just falling asleep. Okay.
They're droopy.
Okay, that's one way of putting it. All right, so that's states of consciousness, guys. I want to also show you some essays, okay, before we move on to something else. Hold on, so drive. And then we have, what was it? Oh, F. What did I do? Okay, that was not where I wanted to put it. Oop. Slowed fluid intelligence, guys, making me mess up. Here we go. FRQ. Any questions? Also, Miss Cerise put some more material in the review folder, which is some good stuff. Oh, look, Alice, your in-class FRQ essays here.
Oh,
It was marvelous.
thank you.
Okay. All right, so if you look, let's look at to see where this would come in a question, okay? And I think this is in the folder too. I think I put all these FRQs in there. Did I? Did you guys look in there?
The most recent post.
Well, I don't think
I think it's in the prior
one. Hold on.
It's in that Google Drive folder, right?
Yeah, I think it is. I'll go look through it again. Hold on. Is this like freaking you out? Hold on. Trying to find one with the consciousness thing in it. I thought there was. But if you guys look at these FRQs, right, and look at the bullets that they ask, ask yourself, do I know these terms? Right. So if you look at this one, it says, Dimitri and Linda are trying to learn a new dance routine. Give an example of how each of the and I gave a modified version to one of my classes. I gave this. They're trying to learn a new routine for a dance competition. Give an example of how each of these things could affect their performance. Definitions without applications will not score. So would you be able to write about extrinsic motivation, punishment, proactive interference, endorphins, divergent thinking, vestibular system, introversion? And if you say no to that, then you better start learning some terms. It's time. Oh, here's one. So if you look, I also gave a modified version of this to some of my classes. Ellie, a new student at Skinner High School. Yeah, they're so clever, aren't they?
Yeah.
Is determined to make friends. When she attends her first psychology club meeting, she finds herself in a room with 20 strangers who seem to know each other well. She plans to attend a few more meetings before deciding whether she will join. Demonstrate how each of the following could help Ellie in her quest for friendship. You must use a different example for each concept. Definitions alone will not score. So they say mere exposure effect, mnemonic device, Schachter two-factor theory, locus of control. And then it says, demonstrate how each of the following could hinder her quest for friendship. You may use a different example for each concept. Definitions will not score. So, and then they say the in-group bias, regression, operant conditioning, circadian rhythm. So if you had to talk about circadian rhythm, our 24-25-hour sleep-wake cycle, how could her circadian rhythm, now you have to juggle this into how it's going to hurt her ability to make friends. So the first thing you do when you get to an essay like this is you start prioritizing. You have 50 minutes or 55 minutes to read and write both of these. For those of you that are taking the online version, is that you, Noah? No, you're taking in person. On the online version, you're not going to be able to do both of them at the same time. So on the online version, so for the in-person version, traditionally, and I think this year should be, they didn't tell us otherwise, you have a booklet. So you take the multiple choice, they collect it. They give you 10 minutes to regroup. Then they hand you a booklet with the essays. And you could go back and forth, between the essays. But, and I suggest doing that, but on the online version, they're going to open each essay up at a time. So you're going to get one essay, and you're going to have to do it. Then, when you hit submit, it's going to close that essay. And they're going to give you the other one. Does anyone have any questions on that? But if you're taking the in-person, you'll be able to say, all right, let's say this was your first essay. You go, all right, I know 4 out of these 8 bullets, right? So I'm going to do those right now, right? And then you go, these other ones I'm going to put aside for a minute. And then you go look at the other essay and do the bullets you know there. Then you can always come back to the ones you don't know. I don't know if that's a good system for you. I don't know if it'll confuse you. But in the in-person test, you have the right to do that, so you can open the booklet, start writing one, leave space, go to the bullets you know on the other one. Because if you waste time trying to juggle bullets that you don't know, and I'm saying you 100% don't know, if you look at Schachter 2-factor and you go, wow, I don't know what that is. I don't know who Schachter is. I don't know what the 2 factors are. And you start writing about something and you're way off, you wasted time and you cheapened your essay. Now they might look at your other bullets with more scrutiny because they go, I don't know. Did this person just hit it or did they really know it?
Moyal.
With regression, you go, well, maybe I do know that. I know what the word regress means, right? I think it's a defense mechanism. So I think I can talk about that without truly knowing it. And this is why I try to give you the language, like circa, about, dia, a day, circadian, 24 to 25 hours is about a day. What were you going to say, Max?
Oh, yeah, question. So we don't have, when we write it, we don't have to write in order, right?
No.
Oh, all right, cool.
Each of these can be its own paragraph. So you might want to start each, and guys, no A and B. Don't write A, don't write B. You're writing an essay. The essay doesn't have an intro or a conclusion, but it's still an essay. So if you take that piece of paper and hold it away from you, it should look like an essay. The one thing I do suggest doing on the test is when you start a new word, underline it. I don't have kids do that in class, but testing day, it's a good way to, it's a good move because it indicates to the reader that you're addressing a specific part of the essay. So I might even begin, if I had this essay, even though there's no intro and no conclusion, I might begin each part with a topic sentence. So I'd say, Ellie, 4 factors can help Ellie try to make friends at Skinner High School. The mere exposure effect states that the more one is exposed to something, the more favorable that you will find that thing over time. So how can this help Ellie make friends? Anyone want to take that? If the more you're exposed to something, the more favorable you find it. Then what does Ellie need to do if she wants people to like her? Yes, Noah?
To spend more time in a social environment with more people.
Spend more time at this club, right? She I don't know if you saw the first half. So if she attends psychology club meetings, then the more she goes, the more people should find her favorable. So she needs to expose people to her.
You might also speak more often in the club. That way people get more exposed to her voice.
Yeah, but I hope she's got a nice voice. Okay, but see, those would work. The most obvious is the more meetings she goes to, the chances are more people will get to like her, because the mere exposure effect says the more that you are exposed to a novel stimulus, the more favorable you'll find it over time. Now you go, wow, Mr. Moyal, I just threw the word novel in there. Did you need it? No. Would it help? Yes. Okay, but it's not necessary. The more one's exposed to something. Now, how many kids are at this meeting? It says it, doesn't it?
20.
20. 20 is above the capacity of short-term memory or working memory. So if there's 20 people there, she's not going to be able to remember everyone's names. So the mnemonic device is a memory aid, right? So maybe if she made a little song with everyone's names in it, or maybe if she made a sentence that had the first letter of everyone's name, or maybe if she made some sort of mnemonic device, which is a memory aid, it would help her remember the 20 strangers, right? A mnemonic device is kind of like PEMDAS, you know? It helps you reduce things down to something that's memorable. Okay? All right. If we look at hindering Ellie, circadian rhythm. Come on, let's get back to that. We were doing consciousness today. How could her sleep-wake cycle affect or reduce her ability to make friends? Yes, Alice.
Maybe if she didn't get enough sleep, then she's not going to be as energetic as she would have been.
Yeah.
Therefore,
So
not as likable.
Right. So you could say in a normal circadian rhythm, we peak out, around 2-3 p.m. and we bottom out at around 3-4 a.m. Right. And then because you're define, explain, and applying, you might say circadian rhythms are a pattern of biological functioning where we're at our highest point in the afternoon, 2-3 p.m., and we're at our lowest point at 3-4 in the morning. This affects body temperature, energy, sleep-wake consciousness, and mood. So you might say if she's getting irregular sleep, or if she's staying up all night and she attends the meetings, then she might be really tired at the meetings. Her circadian rhythm might be off, and she might be bottoming out in the afternoon. In that way, she's going to be sluggish and slow. She might be moody, and then people aren't really going to like her. Okay? So really with these essays, you got to first define. You have to go, okay, let me throw my definition down, and then look at your definition and see how you can juggle it into the essay. That's really the strategy. Because you go regression. Regression is a defense mechanism where you go back to a previous stage of development because it was safe. So a classic example of regression is a child who's getting a new baby brother might start peeing his bed again, right? Or a child that goes away to college might feel scared and lonely, so they might start calling their parents a lot, right? And looking for them to solve all their problems like they did when they were a little kid, right? This is a weird bullet. You know what she's supposed to do? Curl into fetal position and start sucking her thumb because she's scared at the meeting? No, but if she starts acting childish or in some way goes back to a previous stage of development, you can argue that into there. You say operant conditioning is when we associate a behavior with its consequence, right? So remember Skinner. Reinforced behaviors are or good behaviors are reinforced and bad behaviors are punished, right? So if Ellie is annoying at these meetings, then people are not going to like her. They're going to associate her, in a sense, as a punishment, right? Like a punishing experience, just being around her. So pick a behavior, associate the consequence, and connect them, okay? All right. The in-group bias, remember, is the us and them. So the in-group are people like you. The out-group are people like them. And we divide this whole world into us and them. Republicans think that they are an in-group. They think the Democrats are the out-group. Democrats think that they are an in-group. They think the Republicans are the out-group, right? So we divide, even within Great Neck, you have 2 high schools. So kids at one high school will favor us over them. Kids at the other high school will favor them over us. So, with the in-group bias, how is that going to come into play here? Who's the in and who's the out? Yes, Noah.
Maybe members of the club who were part of the club longer might view themselves as being the in group, and those who are new to the club as the out group.
Right, and therefore, how is this? So Ellie, being an outsider, is going to be seen as an outsider. It's going to be very difficult to make friends in a school where you have an established in group. Okay, and you know, because all these people were at the club before she got there. Okay. Any questions? All right, so let's start getting into the other outline. Do you guys still have some stamina left, or what? You want to start getting into motivation? Okay. All right.
Yes.
Okay, so let's do this. Okay, so AP Psychology. Now we're going to go into this one. So, are you finding the outline thing good? Like, is this effective?
Yeah, it's helpful. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thanks for the feedback. All right, here we go. Okay, so you work with this. I will open up the other. I will open up this. Motivation and emotion. Okay. All right. Theories of motivation. Drive reduction theory says behavior is motivated by needs. So we have certain biological needs. We have a need for food. We have a need for water. We have a need for sleep. We have a need for sex. Okay? Like these are human needs. What it says is when those needs are low, we have disruptions in homeostasis. So your homeostasis is your inner balance, which causes a drive to kick in. So when you have a need for food, what drive kicks in? Alice? Hunger, which leads to what drive reducing behavior?
Eating.
Eating. You have a need for water that kicks in what drive?
Thirst.
Thirst, which then leads to what drive reducing behavior?
Drinking.
Yep. You have a need for rest, which kicks in your sleep drive, which leads to sleeping. So this isn't brain science, right? Actually, it is. It's psychology. This isn't complicated. Okay. Needs kick in drives. Drives kick in drive reducing behaviors. Even drug addiction, a physical addiction. You have a need for a drug, which kicks in cravings, which leads to doing the drug. Okay? So what this theory says is you're pushed from within to do certain things. But hunger is not the only reason why we eat, right? We eat socially, we eat for a lot of other reasons. But drive reduction theory says we are in a state of homeostasis. When it gets disrupted by a human need, we need to engage in a drive reducing behavior in order to get back to homeostasis. Okay? All right. Then we looked in my class, we looked at skydiving, and we looked at big wave surfing, and we looked at
Mr. Moyal?
Yeah.
So engaging in those behaviors restores what?
Homeostasis, or inner balance, or equilibrium. Okay? Now you say, why would people surf big, beautiful waves, right? Why would people jump out of airplanes? They can get hurt. We're the only animals that do this. So I mean, other animals are daredevils, but humans really make really stupid decisions in the name of adrenaline. So you say, why? So the theory is called arousal theory. Arousal theory says everyone has an optimum level of arousal or excitement. And we seek out activities to bring us to our optimum level. So someone who surfs big waves has a really high optimum level of arousal. So they seek out activities that are compatible with their level of arousal. But this can also change day to day. Like let's say you've been in school all week, right? And you're totally bored. So Friday night comes and your level of arousal is up here. What are you going to seek out doing on that Friday night? You're going to go party with your friends, right? Because it's going to bring you to the optimum level that you want to be at. But now that you've been out with your friends all night, the next morning, your optimum level is going to be down here. So then you might stay inside and watch Netflix all day because that brings you right to where you want to be. Get it? So some people who do stuff like this just have a really high level of arousal. They seek out stormy relationships to be in because regular relationships would be too boring. They eat spicy food because it brings them to where they want to be. Regular food is too boring and bland. So arousal theory says people have different optimum levels of arousal, and they'll seek out activities to bring them to where they want to be. Okay, remember, this is motivation. So what motivates you to do certain things? Now, this is important. The Yerkes-Dodson law says there's a relationship between arousal and performance. The law dictates that performance increases with psychological and mental arousal, but only to a point. So it says, when you're in low arousal, when you're in low arousal, it's going to affect performance. So let's say you're really sleepy in school and you're taking a test. You're not going to be at your optimum performance level. But also, if you're super nervous, you're also not going to do well on the test. Like if you get to the SATs and you're totally stressed out, then it's going to also affect performance. So see this inverted U? It says at medium arousal, we're at our best. So even in athletics, like if you take a free throw, like people that are shooting free throws in basketball, if they're all amped up, if the crowd's got them all nervous and excited, they're going to miss their shots. But if they're under-aroused, they're also going to miss their shots. So they need to level themselves out to get to medium arousal. The Yerkes-Dodson law put 200 BPMs, 200 beats per minute. Once your heart is racing to 200 beats per minute, simple things become impossible to do. So guys, think of watching a horror movie, and the killer, the serial killer or the monster is chasing someone through the woods. What do they always do? They always fall. So even just walking at 200 beats per minute, you're making mistakes. Someone's being followed to their house, right? Think Kitty Genovese, right, is being followed to her apartment. You get your key in the door, but your heart is racing at, guys, watch my hands. Your heart's racing at 200 beats per minute. So you can't even put the key in the door at 200 beats per minute. So we know when people are on this end, high arousal, mistakes get made. I don't want to get political. But if you saw the recent police shooting of the woman that went, taser, 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 right? And she had a gun in her hand. And people go, how could something like that happen? This chart right here explains exactly how it happens. They were handcuffing the kid broke into, like he broke and ran into the car. Her heart rate probably jumped to 200 beats per minute, and performance was affected, right?
Wait, Mr. Moyal?
Yeah.
So is that why, like, when you drive at high speeds and, like, you start getting, like, really excited, that's like when most accidents happen?
But Max, it's funny you say that because there are state laws that say when police are involved in high-speed chases.
Yeah, you back off.
But I didn't say that to a lot of these kids. When police are involved in high-speed chases, they are not allowed by law to approach the car that they were chasing. Let's say that car all of a sudden crashes into the woods. By law, they're supposed to wait for backup. They're supposed to stay at their car. Because if you're involved in a high-speed chase, you're going to be up here. So if you approach that car, 9 times out of 10, that person is going to get shot. Okay, mistakes are going to be made. So the Yerkes-Dodson law explains the relationship between arousal and performance. I've seen this as a bullet in essays, and I've seen it in multiple choice. So get to know it. Whoa, cool bird. Okay, sorry. The opponent process theory of emotion. Do I have that one on there?
Yes.
Okay. The opponent process theory says, this one's a little hard for kids to wrap their head around. Any reaction to a stimulus is followed by an opposite reaction. With continued exposure, the initial reaction becomes weak and the opponent process becomes strong. We become addicted to seek out that pleasurable opponent process. So what does this mean? The way I explain this to my students is, why do people like riding roller coasters? Are there 2 reactions to
it's fun.
Well, Max, hold on a minute. When you go up, you feel anxious. And when you go down, you feel exhilarated. So the initial reaction to a roller coaster is fear, which is counterbalanced by pleasure. So After continued exposure to roller coasters, the fear gets weaker and the exhilaration gets stronger. And we become motivated to seek out the pleasurable opponent process. Can you guys relate to that? It also explains why people like spicy food. What are the two opposing processes in spicy food? You have pleasure and pain. Okay? So as soon as spice hits your mouth, the initial reaction is pain, right? It's painful. But you're getting pleasure from the spicy food because endorphins are rushing to deal with the pain. So when people eat spicy food, they have this endorphin rush where like they're like really enjoying their food. So with continued exposure to spicy food, the pain gets weaker and the pleasure gets stronger. Alice, like you look like you can relate to this, Alice.
I do relate to that.
Okay. All right. It also explains why people stay in stormy relationships. You have fighting and you have making up, right? So after, you know, I'm not going to get into it. Okay. Here we go. Incentive theory. Incentive theory says behavior is pulled from without. So if drive reduction theory says you're pushed from within, like you eat because you're hungry, and you're hungry because you have a biological need. Incentive theory is the opposite of drive reduction. Incentives are environmental stimuli. For example, motivated you to come to this session? Why are you here? You were in school all day. So why are you still sitting in front of a computer? What was the incentive?
Because you make it interesting.
What was the environment? No, Max, that's not why you're here. But thank you, Max. The incentive is to do better on the test, right? If you take, what'd you say, Noah?
I said we want to do well on our AP.
Yes. Now what's the incentive for doing well on your AP?
Studying?
No. Hey, look,
Come into the session.
look, behavior is goal directed. So you want to do well on the AP because you want to get into a good college. You want to get into a good college because you want to get a good job, right? So you have layers of incentives that brought you here. Do you get it? So when we talk about eating being pushed from within, do incentives also shape our dieting? Look, 12th grade, ladies, prom's coming up, right? People want to look good in a dress. So they'll shape their eating habits for the incentive of one night of looking good in a dress, or the incentive of being healthy, or the incentive of looking good in the summer, right? Because, you know, everyone wants to look good. Okay?
Wait, I don't understand the difference between incentive and just a goal.
Incentives are things that bring you to goals.
Okay.
Okay. So remember when we watched the feeding tube diet, those ladies that were hooking a feeding tube through their nostrils? Why were they doing it, Alice?
Because they wanted to lose weight.
For what? For their weddings.
For their weddings.
So
yeah.
a lot of the women had trouble losing that extra 10 pounds. So 2 weeks before their wedding, they tethered a feeding tube through their nostril. So you go, what the hell motivates a woman to do that, right? Walk around with a bag of 800 calories on her hip with a feeding tube tethered over her ear into her nostril. But it was the incentive of looking good at the wedding, okay? Still think it's crazy. All right, Maslow's hierarchy. Real easy. Maslow's hierarchy, to paraphrase Jefferson, says not all needs are created equal. The needs at the bottom are biological, physiological needs. They're the most pressing. The needs at the top are the least pressing, but that doesn't mean that they're not important. So if you look, you need to meet your like if all of a sudden you were stranded on a deserted island, you would need food and water, okay? After food and water, you would need a shelter, right? That's safety needs. You need to be safe and secure. But you'd also need people, right? And I think that COVID is teaching a lot of people this as well, that they're staying home and they're safe, and they're staying home and they're well fed, but they're also not meeting social needs. So if you look, you have physiological needs, you have safety needs, but you also have a need for people in your life. And it says just as much a need as anything else, food and water. It's not at the bottom, but it's still a need. After you met your social needs, you have the need to achieve. You have the need to be competent at things. You have the need to be recognized as by other people. So we call these esteem needs. But we also have a need to understand the world. We have need for beauty in our lives, but obviously a need for beauty in your life, you know, seeing a nice sunset or going to see the Grand Canyon, is not as important as food and water. Okay? Self-actualization is the highest of human needs. It's reaching your highest potential as a human being. In layman's terms, it's reaching your true self. Okay? Now, most people don't get there because many people don't know what their true self is. And in meeting these lower order needs, you might sacrifice that. So let's say, Alice, you wanted to be the best female snowboarder on the planet, okay? And you were on your way there, but you went to college, right? And you met a dude, okay? And you fell in love and you started a family. So in meeting all these other needs, right, now you have security, now you have a family. You gave up that path towards becoming the best female snowboarder on the planet, okay? So and people that are self-actualized see needs beyond the pyramid. So for example, Maslow used Lincoln, Gandhi, Thomas Jefferson, as people that were self-actualized, Martin Luther King. And you didn't have to die in some horrible assassination to become self-actualized. I know I just said like 3 people that were. But did they go beyond their own needs? Did they look to the needs of the world? Did they look to the needs of other people? So he says those people were self-actualized. They reached their true selves. Okay? The way that this works is you at least have to meet partially meet lower order needs. So if you go to class and you're hungry, you're not going to be able to focus on the lesson because focusing on the lesson is a cognitive need or an esteem need. You know, you're trying to achieve, you're trying to understand. But if you're hungry, you have to at least eat something. Otherwise, or if you go to class and you're tired, that is a physiological need. So it's going to be hard to focus on the lesson because a more pressing need needs to be fulfilled first. Okay? All right. All right. Okay. Motivational conflicts. We saw this in one of the essays I just showed you. What's up, Max? Anything? You good?
No, yeah, I'm good. I'm just trying to find this.
Okay. Why am I not going in order? Did I miss anything?
No, now you are.
Okay. A motivational conflict is defined by approaches and avoidances. So approaches are things that you want to do. Avoidances are things that you don't want to do. So the 4 motivational conflicts look like this. An approach conflict is when you have to choose between 2 desirable things. So I always tell the kids, ordering at a restaurant is a classic approach conflict. You want the chicken parm, but you also want the linguine and white clam sauce. So what do? You're in a dilly of a pickle right here, right? So usually the way we settle these conflicts is we say, which do I want more? In more practical terms, let's say you're a high school girl, you're dating some dude. Do I hang out with my boyfriend on a Friday night or do I hang out with my friends, right? Approach conflict. Usually this happens when we're buying something, like you have a limited amount of money, right? And you have 2 things you want to buy. So which one do you buy? You can't have both. In an avoidance conflict, this is when you have to choose between 2 undesirable activities. Do I do my chemistry homework or do I do my American history homework, right? The way you settle these is you ask yourself, which one do I want to do less? And then you just pick the other one. For many people, voting is an avoidance conflict. I don't want to be cynical, right? But do I choose the old guy that's been in government for 50 years? Or do I choose the rabid raccoon on the other side? Okay. Please, parents, I hope you're not listening to me right now. But a lot of people just want better candidates. Okay. An approach avoidance conflict is when one activity has a desirable and an undesirable feature. So the difference between this and the first two is you're not choosing between two things anymore. You have one thing that has an attractive and an unattractive feature. So staying home from school is an approach avoidance conflict. The approach, you get to stay home, you get to hang out in bed all day. The avoidance is you have to make up a bunch of work when you get back. Buying something is an approach avoidance conflict. Like, let's say you want a new MacBook Air. So you go, okay, I'm going to have a brand new computer approach, but I have to part with $1,500 to do it, right? Avoidance. Got it? Okay. A multiple approach, multiple avoidance conflict causes us the most stress. And this is when a decision has many desirable and undesirable features. So a good example of this is picking schools. Okay, you take school A, is in an awesome climate, but it's really far from my family, right? So the approach is you get to live in this beautiful place, right? The University of Hawaii, but the avoidance is I'm really far away from my world. Then you go college B has the program I want, approach, but it's in Michigan, which is freezing, okay? So a lot of times you're weighing apples and oranges, you know? Like, how many degrees does it have to be for me to want to be away from my family, right? And so how do I even approach that? Or let's say you're choosing which limo you want to be in the prom. Limo A has more friends that I like, but it's a crappy limo, okay? Limo B has a bunch of kids I don't like, but it's a limo bus and it's really cool, okay? It's a party bus. All right. We don't need to go through that. Okay. Psychology of hunger. The psychology of hunger they ask about often, like if you look at this essay, I think I had my class write this one, didn't I? Hunger motivation?
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, so if you look, this was an essay dedicated strictly to hunger motivation. So they don't do this often. Actually, it's not strictly hunger motivation, because if you look, there's behaviorism in here, there's culture, there's biology. So it says, describe the role of each of the following mechanisms in determining an individual's eating habits and body weight. So like one biological mechanism and one learning mechanism, and discuss the implications for weight management. So what chemical affects hunger? Blood glucose. So I would write that, guys. If you have to write about any brain chemical that affects hunger, when blood glucose is low, when blood sugar is low, we get hungry. Brain structure that affects hunger is the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus has two areas, right? We talked about this before, the lateral and the ventromedial, and the AP asks about them. So when the lateral hypothalamus is stimulated, you feel hungry. When the ventromedial hypothalamus is stimulated, you feel full. So the easiest way to remember this is L comes before V in the alphabet. You got to be hungry before you can be full. How is that? Is that a good one for you? L comes before V in the alphabet. You got to be hungry before you can be full.
So ventromedial is full?
Yeah. See, the lateral is the hunger center. The ventromedial is the satiety center. So to be satiated means to feel full. Okay. Genetics. So there's something called set point theory, okay? I went over this with my classes. I don't know if you guys did, but how do we...
It's not on the sheet.
It's not? Okay, well, listen.
Yeah, it is.
It is?
Where?
Okay.
It's under number
Oh,
6.
yeah. All right, cool.
Okay, set point theory says, just like a room can have a thermostat in it, which you set at 70 degrees and it keeps the room at 70 degrees, your hypothalamus is your body's weight thermostat. So your hypothalamus has a number, and it's trying to keep you at that number. For a long time, mine was 170. Okay, it was just 170, and it was like my hypothalamus just dialed that number in. And what set point theory says is that two things are going to be controlled by this number. One, when you fall below when I fall below 170, the hypothalamus is going to kick in hunger, and I'm going to feel hungry, and I'm going to start eating to bring myself back up. As soon as I hit 170, it's going to turn off hunger to leave me there. So that's one thing that's affected by set point, is hunger and fullness. A second thing that's affected by set point is your metabolism, the rate which you burn calories. So let's say I fall below my set point. Let's say I get to 165. What is my hypothalamus going to do to my metabolism? I fell below the weight I'm supposed to be at.
Decrease your metabolism?
Yep. Yes, very good, Grace. It'll decrease my metabolism so I hold on to more calories and get back up to 170. But let's say I've hit 180. It's going to speed up my metabolism, or the rate at which I burn calories, to bring me back down. So through these two mechanisms, manipulating your metabolic rate and your hunger and fullness, it keeps you at that set point. Okay? And this is why when people go on crash diets, they usually end up gaining weight. Because when they go on crash diets and they lose weight real quickly, like let's say I'm supposed to be 170, but I want to look hot at my wedding for some reason, okay? And I get down to 155. Because I lost weight rapidly, my hypothalamus is going to slow my metabolism down to try to get me to go back up. So when I start eating again, I'm going to gain weight real quickly because my metabolism is slowed down by dieting. That's why it's very bad to diet like that. You're better off just working out and speeding up your metabolism. Okay? All right. Okay, so let's get to, where are we here?
We're on 7.
7. Oh, okay. All right. The Garcia effect is a conditioned taste aversion. So you guys remember what those are, right? Hold on. Was that it for my thing? Hold on. Huh. Hold on. So the Garcia effect says that if you eat something and you get sick from it, you'll avoid it. So I'm pretty sure Miss Crowdy and Mrs. Crowdy and Mrs. Cerise both did that as well. Sometimes you'll see it as conditioned taste aversion, and sometimes you'll see it as Garcia effect. But the way that the researcher Garcia isolated this or figured it out was he gave rats water laced with and food laced with a nausea-producing drug. They ate the food and they got sick from it, and they avoided that food for the rest of their lives. And they only needed to be exposed once. So many of you right now should be looking within going, oh yeah, I have a conditioned taste aversion. I told my classes, breakfast sausages, like those little links. I had them when I was a kid. I got sick from it. I'll never eat them again. It was God punishing me because they're not kosher, by the way. Okay. Anorexia is a fear of gaining weight. So anorexics tend to avoid food, right? Bulimia is a fear of gaining weight, which is defined by binging and purging. So that's usually, the way that they usually ask about this is usually just being able to recognize it. They'll give you the symptoms from the DSM, and you'll just have to match it with one of them, okay? Intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic, you're motivated from within to do things because it gives you self-satisfaction. Extrinsic motivation is like incentives. You're doing something because of an external goal that you're reaching for. So in school, extrinsic motivation is grades, is grades. and points. In life, at work, extrinsic motivation is usually money or status. Which is more powerful? The answer is neither, okay? Like, you know, if you're playing a musical instrument, intrinsic motivation is going to keep you playing, right? But there's no doubt that in life, if you offer people bonuses and incentive programs at their jobs and raises, then that is a powerful motivator too. So don't think just because intrinsic sounds like you're doing it for a better reason, that it's more powerful. They're both actually pretty powerful. Okay. All right. Achievement motivation, we don't really need to do. All right, the James Lang theory, the Cannon-Bard theory, and the Schachter-Singer theory. Let me pull this up, okay? I don't have that in that slideshow. So, does anyone have any questions so far? I know I've been talking a lot. I can't see most of you, but now would be a good time to take a break for questions if anyone
Wait,
uh,
has.
on the like on the essays,
Yeah.
if you don't know a term,
Mm-hmm.
like should you just skip it? Because you said like if you write something random, then like it like lowers your quality.
Well, it could. You don't know who's reading it. Like, who are the readers? They're people like me. You know, they're people like Miss Cerise. They're not volunteers. They're getting paid, but they're people that are AP Psych teachers or college professors who are going to be grading. And you know, you have personalities in there. And like all teachers, some are lenient graders and go, you know what, this kid didn't get it. It's not perfect, but they got the idea, right? And some will be nitpickers and say, oh, you left out the word novel, so I'm not giving it to you. And there's no way of knowing who's going to grade. But I can tell you that there is a consensus among teachers that sometimes kids are just taking a shot in the dark, right? And if that becomes apparent, you really do start looking at the other bullets with a more discerning eye, right? So I guess what I'm saying, who's that, Grace? Yeah?
Yeah.
I guess what I'm saying, Grace, is the short answer is you don't have to do them in order. So chances are, as you're getting to the bullets that you didn't address, you're running really low on time. Trust me. Like you've never done 2 of these under the gun in 55 minutes. Now, Grace, let me show you something, okay? Actually, you know, obviously I'm showing everybody. But, hold on, scoring. Okay. So I showed this to my classes, Grace, and this is helpful going in just for your own peace of mind. Okay, so if you take this exam, which was 17 years ago, which just shows you how long I've been at this. Hold on, do I have it here? Yeah. So if you look at these essays, I was showing my classes this. This is, first of all, this is the multiple choice. Like what do you need on the multiple choice in order to get a good grade? Obviously, all curves are different. But if you get 15 wrong on the multiple choice or less, you're getting a 5, okay? Regardless of your essays. You know, chances are, if kids are getting 15 or less on the multiple choice out of 100, if they're getting 15 or less wrong, they're probably writing decent essays too. But if you look, less than 1% got a 4. So you're guaranteed a 5 if you come out of the multiple choice like this. If you get 2/3 of the test right, so you can miss a whole third of the multiple choice, and you're still more likely to get a 5 than a 4. So the moral of the story is you want to go into those essays accumulating as many multiple choice points as you can. Now, if you get half right, half to 2/3 right, people are still getting 3s and 4s, right? Depending on their essays. Very few are getting 2s, right? These people's essays right here were probably dismal. So if you look, essays don't matter as much as the multiple choice. 2/3 of the test is the multiple choice, but they still matter. And the difference in a good essay and a bad essay could be the difference between a 4 and a 5. Now, if you look at this second essay here, and I've showed this to my classes, it says time is an important variable in many psychological concepts. Describe a specific example that clearly demonstrates an understanding of the following concepts and how they're related to or affected by time. So Noah, Grace, I want you to look at this and see how many of these bullets do you recognize, right? How many would you be able to write about right now? Hold on, guys. Take a look at this. Try to figure out how many bullets you'd be able to do. I'll be back in 1 second. Okay. Okay, so if you look at this, some of these you might recognize and some of them you might not.
Yes.
Okay? So I'm not going to ask you what you guys came up with what you could actually write about. Now remember, the whole idea here is time. So if you look on this essay, 71,423 kids took the test that year. Of that, 325 kids got all 8. Soak that in for a minute. 1/2 of 1% of the test takers got all 8 bullets. The most common category here, 1 bullet. 1 out of 8. 20% of the test takers got 1 bullet. Now, if you add these categories together, or these numbers together, from 0 to half, you're talking about the majority of the test takers. What portion of the test takers got 5 or more right? 11%, 12%. So 4 bullets or less is what most of the country is going to get. So if you look at this and you go, crap, I know what a critical period is. I know what fluid intelligence is. I know what group polarization is. I know that you're supposed to ring the bell before you bring out the food, right? For the presentation of the CS and the UCS. I know what spontaneous recovery is. Then you go, okay, I know 6 bullets, right? but some of you going, I don't even know that. But if you know 3 bullets, you know more than most of the people taking this test. So remember, and this is not this is a standardized test, which means you're being scored against the group. You're not being scored against the test. And the fact is that kids in Great Neck are very good test takers for the most part. They just came out with the rankings. You guys ranked like 156 out of like 17,000 schools, right? Which is huge nationally. Great Neck North ranked in the 400s, 476, right? How does that happen? Same town.
Yeah.
156 versus 476. Yikes.
Some kids care more.
Yeah, I know, and rankings, whatever. But what I'm saying is that yes, you guys are nervous, and being nervous is what brought you here. But I mean that to the session. But you don't need to get all the bullets right. If you look at this was the research essay, right? So it says identify the research method. That's one bullet. 2 operational definitions for the variables. That's 2 more points. So now we're up to 3. 1 appropriate and inappropriate ethical feature. Now we're up to 5. 1 statistical technique. Now we're up to 6, right? And 2 aspects that research the validity of this conclusion. That's 8 bullets there, okay? So out of the 8, this essay was easier. So if you look, out of the 71,423 kids, the average was 4, not 2.23.
Wow.
All right? But still, on an easy essay like that, most kids only got half of them. So I know that, like, when you go through these essays, you see a bunch of things in the bullets that scare you, and then you assume you don't know anything. But the reality is, you know more than other people. Because I'll have kids that walk out of there and say, "Oh my God, I failed," and then I open the grades up in the summer, and the kids that say they failed got 5s, and then it just annoys me. But I'm happy for them. Okay. Any questions on that?
Nope, thank you.
All right. You know what, guys? I have to eat dinner. Okay, 7 o'clock. I know. I didn't. Once again, I didn't get through the whole thing. Just look up the stuff that I missed. Like, do you guys know the James Lang theory of emotion? Do you want me to go? Do you want me to go over it quickly?
Can you go over?
Go over it quickly.
Yeah. So let's look at the time stuff. Critical period is a limited window of opportunity to learn a skill, right? One skill is language. So if someone doesn't learn a first language by adolescence, they lose their ability to learn a first language. But you could also say learning second languages, like learning Spanish in adolescence is much harder than learning Spanish when you're 2 or 3 years old. Okay, because you're in that critical period for language. So you have to define what a critical period is, and you have to juggle some example of time in there. Fluid intelligence is your processing speed. Okay, it's your ability to reason quickly. This increases to your mid-20s and then decreases. So you guys are getting faster, I am getting slower. Group polarization is when when people are discussing an issue, they get pulled from the center to the extreme. So if you have a bunch of liberals who are talking about Biden's stimulus program or his infrastructure package with a bunch of conservatives, they're going to start the conversation out here, and by the time they get to the conversation, they're going to be out here. They're going to be more extreme. This happens also when the same group, like when a group of like-minded people discuss an issue too. So if you take a bunch of people at a Trump rally, they will be more extreme in their views by the time they leave than when they got there. Okay? So group polarization says the longer people discuss an issue, the more extreme they become in their position. And the key factor is time. The longer you discuss something, the more pulled to the extreme you'll get. Because in defending your position, you're going to become stronger in your position. Okay? The James Lang theory says, in order to experience an emotion, first you must go through certain physiological changes. Okay? So, for example, you're driving down the street. You look up in your rear view mirror and you see police sirens. You see police headlights in your rear view mirror. That's going to cause your heart to race. As soon as you see it, you're going to feel a surge of adrenaline go through you and your heart's going to start racing. Those physiological changes are going to produce the emotion. You come out of a tent and you see a bear. Your heart is racing. And then you feel afraid. Okay? So the James Lang theory says in order to feel an emotion, you must first experience physiological changes. So this theory says if you see that bear, your heart is not racing because you're scared. You're scared because your heart is racing. It's counterintuitive. Your heart is not, you see the police lights in your rear view mirror. Your heart's not racing because you're scared. You're scared because your heart is racing. First, you feel the physiological changes, then you experience the emotion. With the presentation of the conditioned stimulus and the unconditioned stimulus, if I were taking this essay, I would put arrows here. I'd say UCS, food, CS, bell, right? So first you must ring the bell, and then you must, at the end of the bell, present the food. It's not the other way around, because if you bring out the food first, and obviously I'm talking about Pavlov here. If you bring out the food first, what's the point of drooling to the bell?
There is none.
Right. So, or you can use the Watson approach, right? You bring out the rat, the conditioned stimulus, and then you make the loud noise, right? Okay. And then they will associate the loud noise with the rat. A refractory period in neural firing, remember, is the time that it takes to pump the sodium back out of the neuron. So when a neuron's in a refractory period, it can't fire. Because for a neuron to fire, the sodium has to be on the outside and the potassium has to be on the inside. But when a neuron goes into action potential, the sodium rushes in and the potassium rushes out. And that's in a state called a refractory period. So until the neuron resets itself, it can't fire again. It's kind of like when you flush a toilet. You flush a toilet, you have to wait for that tank to fill back up. So toilets also have refractory periods, okay? A time it takes to reset. Sound localization I'm going to do in the next session. So the next session I'm going to exclusively do sensation and perception. I know Ms. Crotty's students are doing that right now. And I know Ms. Cerise did certain aspects of it, like the eye. But that was the one unit that we all pretty much saved to the end. So that's the one unit that if you fell short, you're probably going to fall short in. And the AP tends to answer a lot of questions about it. Okay? Spontaneous recovery is the sudden reappearance of an extinguished response over time. So in classical conditioning, little Albert, the rat was paired with the loud noise 6 or 7 times, which made a really strong response, right? So hold on a second. Let me pull that up. Spontaneous recovery. Okay, hold on. I got all people's thing. Okay, 2020 test. Do I have it yet? All right. There's a graph for this. So, anyone have any questions? Spontaneous recovery is just simply the sudden reappearance of a conditioned response over time. So if little Albert, if Watson had kept him and removed the fear of rats from him, 6, 7 years later, he sees a rat, the response might spontaneously come back. A rat crawls out of a wall, and what spontaneous recovery shows us is an extinguished conditioned response never really goes away. It lies dormant in you, okay? And sometimes it might just come out. Okay, that's it, guys. All right?
Bye, Mr. Moyal. Thank you. See you tomorrow.
You guys were great. You were real patient, okay? All right, I'll see you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.